Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're grabbing a red marker and string, and we are following the money. We're looking at exactly how a highly controversial organization, the Church of Scientology, sustains its absolute power. But we aren't looking at their beliefs or auditing sessions or even those flashy Hollywood JALES. Nope, we are looking strictly at the ledger. Based on a massive trove of investigative reporting, leaked documents, and internal publications, we're going to trace the millions, actually the billions, of dollars flowing into the church. We'll see who's really writing the checks and the profound earthly and, well, unearthly things that money is buying.
When most of us think of Scientology, we picture the red carpet, right? We picture massive movie stars. But while those celebrities are the famous faces, the critics and former insiders we've been reading ask a different question. Who are the true financial engines? They call them the whales. These are the ultra-wealthy individuals quietly keeping the lights on. They're the ones funding those massive ideal org buildings and bankrolling the army of legal defense funds. And honestly, the sheer amount of cash they're pouring in is just staggering.
To really wrap our heads around the scale we're talking about here, just think about the number $360 million. That's not a total organizational budget. That is the estimated amount reportedly given to the church by a single family, the Duggans. Bob Duggan, a billionaire biotech entrepreneur, and his ex-wife Trish Duggan are widely considered the undisputed heavyweight champions of Scientology donations. To put this in perspective, this one family's financial footprint literally dwarfs almost everything else in the organization's entire history. But it begs the question, how on earth does a church convince someone to just hand over hundreds of millions of dollars?
Well, that brings us to part one, the Gamified Ledger.
The International Association of Scientologists, or the IAS for short, tracks donor status using a strict financial ledger. It's essentially a gamified leaderboard. A cumulative donation of $50,000 gets you the title of patron, but to keep climbing the ranks, the price tag absolutely skyrockets. $1 million gets you gold meritorious, $5 million bumps you up to diamond meritorious, and for a cool $15 million, you can call yourself a diamond laureate. It's a system completely designed to push donors to constantly chase the next elite title, complete with massive, flashy trophies and standing ovations at their annual galas.
So the crucial takeaway here is that a whale isn't just a rich member. They are the fundamental financial backbone buying power for the church. Ex-members and critics use the term whale because it perfectly captures their role. They aren't just dropping a few bucks in a collection plate. They are single-handedly financing a global expansion of real estate, massive legal teams to fight off lawsuits, and a whole network of affiliated front groups.
Let's move on to part two, the mega donor elite.
Investigative reports show a massive disparity in where the money actually comes from. The church relies heavily on a tiny handful of billionaires and centimillionaires at the absolute top, rather than a broad base of standard high-level donors. The whole organization is exceptionally top-heavy. And, as their overall membership numbers have faced intense scrutiny and potential decline over the years, the reliance on these ultra-whales to fund operations has become more critical than it has ever been.
When you list them out, the difference between the public faces and the true financial engines is incredibly stark. Sure, Tom Cruise and John Travolta provide absolutely unmatched PR. And influencers like Grant Cardone use their massive platforms to vocalize support. But critics point their focus directly at the quiet tycoons. Guys like Tom Cummins, whose donations are estimated north of $50 million. And of course, the Duggans. Investigative exposés emphasize that it is these massive business fortunes that act as the actual backbone. They are the ones shielding the church from scrutiny and funding its most controversial practices.
Which leads us perfectly into part three, the exposé on political strings.
So what does all this concentrated wealth actually buy in the real world? Well, it buys leverage. A perfect example highlighted by investigative journalists involves former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. Now, to be totally clear, Bondi is not a Scientologist herself. She's an evangelical Christian. But she has exceptionally deep ties to their donor class. Reports show she has made multiple personal appearances at the Fort Harrison Hotel, which is Scientology's most sacred site, speaking directly to audiences of Scientologists. And she's even attended fundraisers at the private homes of wealthy church members.
And it's fascinating to see how these connections can actually play out. Let's look at a specific timeline. In March 2024, a group of pilots were arrested in a state case for allegedly bilking John Travolta.
Fast forward to January 2025, and the defense tries to put Travolta in the hot seat for a deposition. Then, in April, Pam Bondi appointed Gregory Cahill, an attorney from a firm deeply connected to representing Scientology, as interim U.S. attorney. By October, the U.S. Attorney's Office moved that exact same case to federal court, completely wiping away the defense's attempt to depose him. Journalists covering this pointed out just how smoothly a massive headache for church VIPs simply vanished. The point here is that this money doesn't just build empty churches, it builds a direct bridge straight to Washington. Scientology's wealthiest members have become massive political donors. Trish Duggan was appointed to the Kennedy Center Board. John Cole, a high-level Scientologist, was appointed as a special envoy in the Trump administration. Grant Cardone is out there speaking at major political rallies. They are actively securing a level of government access and safe-pointing that the church has literally dreamed of for decades.
All right, let's pivot to part 4, which is where things get truly bizarre. Hoarding wealth for reincarnation.
This presents a legitimate logistical nightmare for a mega donor like Tom Cummins. See, according to bedrock Scientology doctrine, humans are immortal spiritual beings called thetans. When your body dies, your thetan goes to a maternity ward and jumps into a newborn's body to start your next lifetime. So, for a tycoon leaving behind immense, unfathomable wealth, the ultimate question is, how on earth do I keep my current heirs from spending all my cash while I'm out looking for a new body?
The absolute contrast between standard estate planning and the leaked legal presentations crafted specifically for Scientology's mega donors is wild. Standard planning, that's about passing wealth to your family or your favorite charity. But thetan estate planning, that is entirely about hoarding wealth so you can literally reclaim it in a future life. It's about legally preventing your current heirs from spending your money on things the church hates, like psychiatry, or ensuring your kids stay locked into the church's hardcore C organization if they ever want to see a dime.
The leaked legal documents state this strategy completely plainly. Normal lawyers, standard trust managers, traditional doctors, they simply will not do when you are trying to orchestrate a financial empire from beyond the grave. You need fiduciaries who are thoroughly, completely indoctrinated into the belief system to pull this off. Because Scientology views traditional psychiatry as profoundly evil, these estate plans include ridiculously strict medical directives. To ensure their next lifetime isn't ruined by what they view as suppressive forces, these whales legally mandate that their trust cannot, under any circumstances, be used for psychotropic drugs or mental health professionals. They replace standard medical competency checks with church auditors, and they require that any disputes over the estate be handled not in a regular court of law, but in mandatory arbitration before a private church body.
Okay, here is the actual step-by-step legal loophole presented to donors to warehouse their cash. First, you create a dynastic trust in a highly secretive jurisdiction like South Dakota. Second, you create special-purpose LLCs to actually hold all the assets. Third, you legally mandate that the board of managers for these LLCs are exclusively active members of the Church of Scientology in good standing. And fourth, this is the absolute kicker. When the donor returns in a new body, the church initiates a protocol to confirm their identity, and that reincarnated person is placed right back on the board to demand their checkbook. Seriously. But even the customized legal presentation designed for these tycoons openly admits the extreme risks here. Critics are quick to point out the staggering reality of this setup. You are legally empowering a church to decide which random newborn eventually gets handed the keys to a billionaire's trust fund. As long as the church gets its cut to certify the return to donor, the money just continues to flow under the shield of religious freedom.
And that brings us to part 5, the final ledger. We've followed the money from those gamified donation tiers to the absolute highest levels of political influence, all the way to legal trusts designed to cheat death itself. If a small group of incredibly wealthy whales are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to shield their celebrities, influence today's justice system, and literally warehouse their fortunes for their next lifetime, what exactly are they going to fund next? And more importantly, who is really holding the power here? The church leadership or the billionaires keeping the lights on? Think about that as you process this explainer. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the ledger.